Hi, in this guide we will discuss the Cyclone Slayer using staves and shockwave support. When channeling the regular Cyclone, you move 20% slower, but with additional gem quality bonuses, you can reduce that penalty or even make it a positive multiplier. However, you would trade a lot of damage and survivability for that. The main focus of this guide will be the transfigured Cyclone instead, but you can freely interchange those two skills to suit your needs. The transfigured Cyclone of Tumult accumulates stages as you keep channeling this skill, which greatly improves your attack speed and area of effect, but drastically slows down your movement speed. The stages disappear over 3 seconds, so the only realistic way to deal with this slow is using the Stampede boots. This build focuses on expanding the benefits of war staves. They usually offer a little bit less physical damage compared to axes or swords, but they have a much easier time capping critical strike chance, provide a lot of block chance, and have easy access to fortify and endurance charges. The staves can also use an exclusive shockwave support, which creates a burst of damage in a large area around the enemy you hit with your Cyclone, which greatly improves your clear speed and makes your gameplay more dynamic. The shockwave has a short cooldown, but it can store up to 3 charges. With this setup, you will focus on physical damage and critical strikes. The Impale is a special mechanic available only for this type of damage that inflicts a stacking debuff that repeats a portion of your damage every time you hit the enemy again, up to a limit. It is a melee build, so you will need a lot of defense. To reduce incoming damage, you will use Fortify, Armor, and flat damage reduction from endurance charges and Brutal Fervor. You will also avoid most attacks thanks to your block and evasion. Your Cyclone is ultimately limited to melee range, but you never have to stop to deal damage. It works great in narrow layouts. The Shockwave greatly helps with bursting more durable enemies, but the Cyclone also deals a lot of damage. The build uses a lot of rare items whose quality affects your performance. We recommend preparing at least 30 Divine Orbs for a smooth experience. The only required unique item for this build is the Stampede boots to prevent the movement speed penalty. For the regular Cyclone, you can use Ashes of the Stars and Diala's Malefaction to instead move 10% faster than regular walking. Other unique items used in this build boost your damage but are not essential for the functionality. With those boots, your movement speed will always be at 150% of the base value, which can only be affected by modifiers to your action speed, such as Shrines, Tailwind, or Chill. Additionally, you can anoint them with oils to get a decent damage bonus. The Abyssus is a damage-oriented option. It has a lot of it, but also increases physical damage taken, making the character very fragile. It is a good starter option, but you should replace it later, as you will have enough DPS without it. The Magnate is a great and cheap offensive option if you don't have other sources of double and triple damage and can reach 400 strength. It also improves your Flask sustain and makes capping resistances much easier. Try to get a corrupted version that grants even more resistance. Rislatha's Coil is a very good belt for most physical attack builds. Try to get as much more maximum attack damage without lowering the minimum damage too much. You can also amplify those effects with Catalyst. It provides plenty of maximum life, but makes capping resistances harder. You can get a lot of extra damage while wearing this ring and using Herald of Purity. The Synthesis Implicits are also quite useful, as they can provide a bit of extra resistance or attributes. The Light of Meaning Jewel quite simply increases your physical damage by a large amount. Socket it near the Stamina Notable. You can also use Version with Chaos Resistances if you value defense more than offense. Thanks to this jewel, your Impales can last for 2 additional hits while you are using Pride Aura. It can also provide plenty of other useful modifiers, but the Impale is the most important one. You can use those jewels to borrow any duelist's Ascendancy Notable. The Master of Metal is quite cheap and offers a lot of flat physical damage in this setup. The Inspirational is also very good, especially if you use Blood Stance a lot. This armor provides no defensive or utility modifiers whatsoever, but it can raise the quality of your regular Cyclone skill gem by 30%, which grants you 15% more movement speed while channeling. This amulet is another source of additional quality for your regular Cyclone. The additional skill level of all skills and extra attack speed makes it a good option even for the transfigured version. On the rare items, you will look for physical damage, critical strike multiplier, attack speed, and enough accuracy to reach the cap. Defensively, you will need high maximum life, armor or evasion, and resistances. Getting enough attributes can be quite problematic, as the passive tree provides almost only strength. Your weapon is your main source of damage, so you should look for the highest physical DPS staff you can afford, ideally with a high base critical strike chance. Keep in mind that attack speed doesn't affect the shockwave. You should focus solely on the physical damage. On the helmet, aim for decent life, elemental resistances, attributes, and accuracy rating. For the Eldritch mods, get reduced mana cost of attacks and mana reservation efficiency. Removing the mana cost is a huge quality of life upgrade, which you can achieve via Warlord modifier. Try to match it with defensive bonuses like armor, physical damage reduction, or resistance. Later on, you can upgrade it for the much more expensive double influenced version with hunter modifiers that grant you additional curse or raise your base critical strike chance. Stacking quality on the regular Cyclone is reasonable only if you can get a lot of movement speed from other sources, such as your boots. At the very least, it should provide a basic high movement speed bonus, but they also can grant you buffs such as Onslaught, Elusive, or Tailwind. Here you can get a lot of damage. Look for attack speed, increased damage while leeching, and optionally increase strike range or accuracy rating. Don't forget about maximum life and resistances or attributes. The Eldritch Implicits can grant you a chance to intimidate enemies, speed up your rage generation, or cover lacking chance to impale enemies. There are a lot of modifiers you will want on your jewelry, which you can mix and match freely. You should look for high maximum life, critical strike multiplier, and accuracy, but you will also need a lot of resistance and attributes. You can also get the mana leech here, which will make your cluster jewels cheaper. Look for maximum life, resistance, attributes, and open prefix to craft the mana cost reduction. It can also grant you the mana leech. For damage, you can look for critical strike multiplier crafted via Essence of Scorn on a fractured base. Try to get increased life on your jewels, preferably 7%, and some damage modifiers like attack speed or critical strike multiplier. You can also look for lacking resistances, attributes, mana leech, or corrupted blood immunity. The Overlord Notable grants you Fortify on hit, which saves you a lot of passive points. The Feed the Fury has great value as you are always leeching, but you might also need the Fuel the Fight if you can't get the mana leech elsewhere. You can get 100% stun avoidance if you get 2 medium jewels with the Unwavering Focus Notable, but usually it is not that much of a problem. At first you can use a Rosethorn Tincture for the massive amount of critical strike chance and attack speed bonuses it grants, but it can be annoying to use with the small amount of unreserved mana. The Bottled Faith is one of the best offensive flasks in the game for every build that uses critical strikes. Use Enchant to trigger it upon hitting rare or unique enemy, as it is the only source of consecrated ground for this build. For your remaining magic flasks, you should use a defensive setup that grants you armor, evasion, and removes bleeding. You can also use a diamond flask for the critical strike chance, or Quicksilver flask if you are using a regular Cyclone with rare boots. Cyclone of Tumult gains stages while channeling, which greatly improves your attack speed and range, but lowers your movement speed. You can also use the regular version that deals less damage, but can reach higher movement speed with proper investments. The Shockwave offers more damage than any other support gem, but the majority of your damage comes from the Cyclone. The Intimidation and Crush debuffs from the Awakened support gems increase the damage taken by your enemies, or reduce their defenses against physical damage. Pride causes nearby enemies to receive more physical damage. This bonus is amplified the longer your target stays in melee range. The Blood and Sand skill allows you to switch between those two stances, which grants you bonuses to either your damage or radius of your Cyclone. Flesh and Stone is another stance skill. It greatly reduces the damage you take from nearby enemies, or causes them to take more damage from you. Herald of Purity quite simply improves your physical damage. It is more valuable if you use the relevant circle of Guilt Ring. Precision grants you a flat accuracy rating and a bit of critical strike chance. At level 1, it reserves a small amount of mana, but it may be worth it to level it up if your mana allows for that. You will need a second 6-link setup to support all your auras, with the Enlightened support to significantly reduce their mana reservation. You can also consider using Arrogant support for the Precision aura alone. Use the Assassin's Mark to increase the critical strike chance and critical strike multiplier against your target. Hitting marked enemies will also generate power charges for you. With the Mark on hit support, you will automatically trigger the Assassin's Mark when you hit enemies with your Cyclone. The life tap might be useful if you have a low amount of unreserved mana. Molten Shell grants a protective shield based on your armor. If you don't have a lot of it, you should use the Steel Skin instead. You can automatically trigger this skill with the cast when damage taken support, or automation gems depending on which style you prefer more. Planting the War Banner on the ground greatly improves your physical damage if you stay within its range. It consumes stacks of Valor, which you gain by fighting enemies. You will probably plant your banner only once per fight, so you should make it last longer with this support. You can't gain Valor while the banner is active. Vulnerability increases the physical damage received by your enemies. You will need to anoint the Whispers of Doom, or have a specific modifier on your body armor to use it. You can cast it manually, or mix it with the guard setup. Blood Rage is a buff that increases your attack speed, and generates Frenzy Charge on kill. Unfortunately, there is no easy way to generate those charges against bosses. Berserk consumes your rage at an accelerating rate, but greatly improves your damage during its duration. It requires good rage generation to be worth it. Frostblink, like many others on this list, is an instant skill, so you can use it without interrupting the Cyclone. It teleports you a short distance and leaves a chilling ground in both locations. Killing all bandits for one additional passive point is the best option in the endgame, but you can help Alira to make your early gearing process easier. There is no convenient way to get ailment immunity for this setup, so you should pick the soul of the Brine King to become immune to freeze and reduce the effect of chills. Similarly, for the minor Pantheon power, you should choose the soul of Garukan to make shocks less threatening. You can start using the Cyclone as soon as you meet the level requirements, although it will probably be more efficient to forfeit the critical strikes and opt for the precise technique for a guaranteed 40% more damage modifier during the campaign, as reaching satisfying critical strike chance requires a lot of investments. You don't need to use staves at first either, just pick whatever provides the most physical damage you can find. For more tips and adjusted leveling passive tree, visit the written guide on the website linked in the video description. The final passive tree is quite usual for an attack build. You will need plenty of bonuses for your maximum life, critical strikes, and a chance to impale. Thanks to the Mana Mastery and Aura Notables, you will be able to fit in more auras in your build. If you can't afford the Cluster Jewel with the Overlord Notable, you can simply temporarily pick up the Fortify Mastery to get this powerful buff. You will also have easy access to the Unwavering Stance Keystone if stuns are too much of a problem, but you will lose the ability to evade almost half of the incoming attacks. The Cyclone is not a strike skill, but modifiers that grant extra strike range provide increased area of effect for this skill instead. For this reason, the Brinkmanship or Impact Notables are an excellent choice for this build. We hope you enjoyed this guide. If you have any questions or want us to work on a specific build, please leave a comment. Thank you for watching and have a good day.